Hello, I'm Wendy Wilson, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Realizing Potential. I'm super excited about today's guest. I have admired her from afar, probably for maybe about 2 years, and learned of her through Instagram and started following her. But she has an impressive background, particularly as it relates to securing government contracts and a wonderful professional portfolio. But I could go on about her. I would like for her to share more about her background, her interest, and why she is been really extremely successful in the field that she's in. She is none other than Dr. Lauren Josephs. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Tell our viewers a little bit about you as it relates to your academic pursuits and then what led up to your current professional background.
Yeah, I started my career as a licensed psychotherapist. So, that involved getting a master's and specialist degrees in mental health counseling. And I attended the University of Florida, go Gators, during that period of time. And I worked as a therapist for a number of years, but soon started to realize some patterns that I wanted to explore further, namely the disproportionate number of individuals who were members of racial and ethnic minority groups who were involved in the juvenile justice system. And that led me back to school to pursue my doctoral degree. And I received a doctoral degree in public affairs from UCF. And my intent was to, and still is, to work to identify solutions to social problems. And it was through an unintentional path. A lot happened through serendipity that I ended up in the space that I am today, doing some of the work, as you referenced, in the government contracting arena.
Let's and I certainly want to delve into that area, but if you could go back and you talked about the disparities that we absolutely know still continue to exist as it relates to wellness, mental wellness, and of course that area is extremely broad.
Yes.
Um, what concerns me is that we're taking some steps back.
Mhm.
We understand that our mental and emotional being is at the core of every and anything that we do. Would you speak to what you've seen in terms of the evolution, or do you actually see or observing some regression in that area?
I absolutely am observing regression, but I'm not frankly surprised by it. Systems of oppression tend to reinvent themselves.
Mm.
And when there is a concerted movement towards progress, there's a dark undercurrent that raises its head. And I think that that's what has manifested over the past number of years. And when we have individuals who are leaders in spaces and are communicating vitriol and make it acceptable to do so, the shame of being divisive has been removed, then the underbelly raises its head. And I see, sadly, the impact of that unfolding at this time.
Sure. Um, I don't want to miss an opportunity. Despite those realities, we do know that there is still a profound and a significant need to bring mental health and wellness to the forefront, particularly in those marginalized communities where we, in many instances, still have yet to embrace
Mhm.
the impact and the importance of that.
Yeah.
So, what is it that you would suggest, based upon your experiences, as to how we can counter that?
It's unfortunately not a one size fits all
Sure.
response. However, I think the more we can be active listeners to those who approach us with the challenges that they're experiencing in life, the more likely people would feel, the less likely people would be stigmatized by the concerns that they're having. I'm Jamaican, and I can speak for my culture, and there are several other cultures who have had a shame-based philosophy around being unwell in any area. So many people have been told to fight through whatever it is that they're experiencing. And so there's a lack of tendency to seek help.
Yeah.
The other side of it, though, Doc, is that we as a society are less equipped to recognize when we need to seek support for mental health concerns. There's no guidance, not like you have guidance with, from a child is born with the well baby checkups to as you get older, as a woman, gynecological checkups, checks for breast cancer. There are certain benchmarks that we are told we need to be mindful of on the physical health side. But on the mental health side, there are no such guidelines that
Mm.
are broadly communicated. And I think it's to our detriment. And as a result, what we have seen in the data is that it takes an average of 11 years for an individual who has experienced a mental health concern to seek help. 11 years.
Wow. That's staggering and quite sobering. Uh, That, and so do we then add some additional years to that when we talk about these communities and these marginalized groups who have yet to accept again the importance and value of, as you gave those wonderful examples, when we go to check our physical health. And so we go for gynecological exams and we go for eye exams and we go to have our teeth checked. All of those things that we can check off, and then we miss the part of the counseling and even those environments where we can then be diagnosed if there's some challenges. So my mind is spinning because if you're saying that there is an 11-year basically lag coupled with those systems that we know we are oftentimes victims of, it's a horrific storm that we continue to exist within. And then let's also remember we just dealt with the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the consequences of that, the feelings of isolation. I thought that we were hopefully making some improvements, and I'm going to base it on you, certainly, are the expert in terms of generations working in a higher education space here at Albany State University, and continue to be very proud of the students that come forth and say, yes, I need some help. Yes, I need some. This has been my diagnosis or not, but I'm just not feeling well, and they're stepping up to the forefront and taking the lead. So I'm I'm just in awe. I'm very concerned, and I know you see it on the forefront on a daily basis. But
Yeah.
wow, so 11 years.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right because that's on average. So there are some individuals and likely in the segments that are less likely to seek support, are more likely to have poor outcomes. Um, the average will likely be longer for those populations.
Wow, wow. Okay. So let's before we transition into the other area that you do so well, is there something give us some direction and some guidance in terms of if we find ourselves in a state where something does not feel quite right or is amiss, and we need some support to help us just navigate day to day emotionally and mentally. What
Yeah.
some offer some words.
Yeah, one of the things that I typically recommend because people are less stigmatized by starting with their primary care doctors
Okay.
is to start the conversation there.
Yes.
People are more comfortable in talking to their physicians, and now there are collaborative care models where some private practices, physicians' offices also have mental health practitioners on site. There's a growing movement around that collaborative care model because of the reasons that we previously described and the stigma that's typically attached to seeking mental health services. So I would say talk to your doctor, someone who you have been comfortable in seeking services with, someone that you trust, and you can start the explorative process there.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for that. Now, the government contract space, you have expanded your business portfolio and certainly a in the healthcare wellness space, mental wellness space, and done great work in that particular area. But then at some point, you ventured off into securing government contracts and then training and coaching others. And you've done very well in that area. Share with particularly our students that might be watching that you do not have to confine or limit yourself to one profession, one discipline. The opportunities await, and to certainly follow your passion.
Absolutely, the opportunities are frankly endless. I like to let people know that the federal government is the number one purchaser of goods and services on the planet, goods and services. So whether you are interested in selling products to the government or services, there are opportunities for you. So when I started, it was because I had made the shift from doing day-to-day mental health service provision, and through my doctoral degree had started to work more in health disparities, assessing the reasons for the poor outcomes in some segments of our communities and designing strategies around solutions. And I started to consult in that area. And I knew that for me to hone into my area of interest, which is really to eliminate disparities in health outcomes, both mental health and physical health, I had to have the space to pursue my interests unapologetically. Sometimes I have found from my experience, and this is not everyone's experience, but working for large corporations, sometimes there are limits to your ability to pursue what is in your heart to do. So it was because of that that I started a consulting firm. And I knew that the one-off service provision wasn't going to cut it in terms of building a stable foundation financially for my business. And I was aware of the disparities in outcomes for Black women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses in general. So I had to find a way to to be honest with you, Doc, I just didn't want to be homeless. I wanted to ensure that there was a means for me to have a good quality of life while I pursued my interests on the professional side and provide high quality care. And for me, government contracting and contracting in general has been the path that has made that possible.
Outstanding. And yeah, you said a myriad of things, and that we could probably have 2 hours of conversation around all the touch points that you made. Why so many people leave their 8 to 5s, if you will, or working for an employer to pursue their entrepreneurial passion. Of course, the reality is we all want an income. We want an income that will help to maintain the lifestyles of our choosing. But the other part of it is many times entrepreneurial pursuits occur because of the confinement, the the how it is identified that you will engage, interact, and navigate in this space that you have found yourself in. And of course, we apply for these jobs. The list goes on and on, but at the end of the day, you are held to expectations and outlined criteria. And
Right.
sometimes, I shouldn't say sometimes, in many instances, it does not align with who you are in terms of your authentic self. So you then
Right.
have to make some decisions.
Right.
And what we have seen, I know you and I in the spaces that we've been in, we've just observed where back to the whole wellness piece,
Yeah,
particularly the emotional and mental wellness, sometimes that comes at a cost.
absolutely. It
Yeah.
absolutely comes at a cost. And because I'm a health disparities researcher and I see there's a common thread. You see um, lack of financial resources underlies poor outcomes, right? That's one of them. And so for me, you mentioned delving into the government contracting space and having the opportunity to support other Black women as they pursue funding opportunities. For me, it was my attempt to address the disparities in outcomes in small Black women-owned businesses. I don't know if you are aware that on average, Black women-owned businesses earn under $25,000 per year as compared to $216,000 per year for white women-owned businesses. And we struggle tremendously to pursue our interest, and it's not lack of skill or ability, right? We're highly competent, highly skilled, highly educated, and have gifts that really we ought to be sharing, but we fall apart because of the lack of funds. And I have seen over the years this approach that I find problematic, where it's leading with the loans,
Mhm.
access to credit cards, which is important. We
Sure.
need to leverage our credit. However, if we're not bringing revenue into our organizations, then it's a game of cards. And so it's really important to find avenues to bring revenue that is sustainable, because otherwise we will not be able to build successful companies.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. And so certainly there's a financial piece, which is, the foundation of much of our ability to get started, sustain, and then absolutely advance. And then there's the access piece
Yep,
too. Um,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So knowing the Dr. Lauren Josephs, who can then introduce you to those opportunities or those individuals who can then allow you the access that you absolutely need. And I concur, and we have said this at exhaustion, where it is not a matter of what it is that you are bringing to the table. We bring tables under our arms, on our back, carrying them on our heads. We are
Yeah,
extremely and abundantly qualified. And so at the end of the day, as you mentioned earlier with this conversation, it's those systems in place
yeah,
that don't allow us the access, the entry to even get started.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us a little bit more specifically who your client is, and I'm sure we'll have some listeners out there that we've piqued their interest, and they too would like to enter into this space. So tell them how they can reach you and what they can expect.
Yeah. So if you are someone who's listening and so I'm going to speak of two clients. In
Sure.
my consulting capacity, which is what I do primarily on a day-to-day basis, I provide research, evaluation, training, and technical assistance to organizations, primarily in the health space, mental health and physical health. So individuals who are trying to assess the effectiveness of their programs and need evaluation services, or individuals and organizations that are trying to design programs that may have a more positive impact, particularly with communities that have differences in cultures from the general majority population, soon to be minority population of the United States. I do those services, continuous quality improvement efforts, and so on. So research, evaluation, training, and technical assistance. Specifically with regards to the government contracting, this is a very small part of what I do. I do this from my heart because really to try to address the disparities in outcomes in Black women-owned businesses. So for Black women who have businesses or are interested in starting businesses and pursuing government contracting, I teach through an incubator, the Grants and Contracts Incubator, everything that you need to know about government contracting. And I say everything knowing what everything means. So not just everything as a filler word.
Yes.
So we talk about everything from registering in the appropriate areas that you need to be registering to be eligible to pursue funding opportunities, both on the grants side and the contract side, the rules that are in play that you need to be familiar with so that you can operate in integrity and be compliant, because that's really important. So we talk about the federal acquisitions regulations. You learn the way of conducting market research. So you understand who the funders are that are best suited for your professional areas of interest. And so that's a big part of it. You learn how to write proper proposals, to place bids, and how to do the follow-up. So really and someone who just has an interest will leave the cohort with a full understanding of what is required to be successful, and also during the process will identify an opportunity that they will be pursuing so that they can apply the lessons learned. And that is wrapped around ongoing supports through office hours. So during the incubator, there are twice weekly office hours for the participants, in addition to the 2-hour weekly didactic portion. And then following the incubator, there's also twice monthly at no additional cost office hours so that they can continue to receive guidance and be
Excellent. And
successful.
your next incubator session is coming up in the fall? Is that
It's
right?
coming, it starts
Okay.
in August. I offer 2 incubators per year. One is wrapping up now. We have a wonderful cohort that's really making gains, and I'm looking forward to see their outcomes. But yes, in August, cohort 4 will start.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, I'm looking at that and trying to rearrange my schedule. As I've shared earlier, I have been quite impressed with who you are, what you do, and the impact that you have really on a global level. So that has always been impressive. You have lead a very busy life, and so I ask all my guests. Um, so the two questions that I have, because we do have to step away from these professional spaces because we are not just that individual. We are multifaceted. So what is it that you do on a recreational level? An avid reader, and if you are as well, share with the viewers a book that has most impacted your life that you find yourself going back to, and what else is it that you do for fun?
Yeah, I like to travel and travel far and travel near. So sometimes I explore areas in my own community that I wasn't previously familiar with, but I've traveled far and wide to places like Brazil and South Africa and Russia and China and many places. I'm fascinated by cultures and love to see and learn about people's experiences and their frames of reference. And I see so many commonalities in human beings, and often am dismayed that we feel that we are so far apart. We have more in common than not. I am an avid reader. One of the books that I have enjoyed over the years and is by Nelson Mandela, The Long Walk to Freedom. It just speaks to the human spirit in a way that resonated with me, to be able to move through life and have such tremendous challenges and remain still so to hold on to integrity and compassion and care about human beings is tremendous. And so that's one of the books that I enjoy. I read a lot also in my field about health disparities, and it's that can be depressing because it's always the same thing, the same segments of population are impacted negatively by social and structural determinants that
Sure.
are really challenging to address. But I remain healthy and sane because I surround myself with family and lead a simple life, a nice life, but simple in terms of focusing on what really matters to me, which is the health of myself, those around me, and quality of life.
Well, thank you. You said so many things I have to absolutely applaud. Let me go back to that is a remarkable book. He was of course a remarkable man, and my mind immediately went to the one of the moments in my have many moments in my life that I will absolutely treasure, and that was one where I had an opportunity to hear him speak in Detroit. It was shortly after his release.
Um,
And his speech was absolutely remarkable. And his demonstration of humanity will just absolutely leave you in awe, considering his
yeah.
life experiences and that unfortunate confinement. But it was just transformative for I would just say humankind on so many levels. So that's a great example. You talked about your world travels and the common threads that you've seen, and then I was reminded of the book Cast and how
Yes.
these constructs are deliberate. And again, so many commonalities, but to maintain these systems and these false constructs of superiority, and how systems of economic systems have been undergirded with that, and how you just see that whatever part of the world that you're in, it still exists.
Yeah.
So I cannot imagine what you do in terms of what you see as it relates to your research. So I'm glad and delighted to know that you're very intentional about your wellness. You use the word sanity, and that's so important because I think it's a thin line some days.
Yes.
You can cross.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that you could always come back to the other side of sanity. So I'm glad to know that you're very intentional. Doc, I'm enjoying this immensely, but I know that we have to wrap up. So you're hosting a dinner, and you get the opportunity to invite three people that we are familiar with. They could be living or no longer in the world as we know it. Who would those individuals be? Oh, Doc, I think this is not hard for you. I see your face like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
And what would you serve?
Wow. Wow. That's a wonderful question. And my mind just started going all over the
And if
place.
you can name, you have more than three, then you
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes. So I would absolutely invite Jay-Z.
See, I knew it. I knew it, Doc. I knew you and I are. We need to do a DNA check. Isn't he amazing? Just yeah.
Oh my God, it's funny. My family will laugh because they're like, yeah, you will leave us outside. No, but Jay-Z, I would love to invite Michelle Obama.
Okay.
I would want my father is no longer alive, and I would love for him and my mother to be there,
Mhm.
just because of what they have meant to me in my life. So anything that I find to be exceptional that I have the opportunity to experience, I always think of them
Yeah.
because I know the sacrifices that they made to make things possible for me. So those are the people I would say. I have like 20 more, but you said three and I made it four. So I'll
That's okay. Those
and
are
what
great.
I would serve Jamaican food. I would serve jerk chicken and curry chicken and rice and peas, and I would it would be a Jamaican spread.
I love it. I love it. I said that was going to be the last question, but I got to go back to the Jay-Z invitation. So, what's the one burning question you would want to ask him?
You know, I don't know that I have a burning question. I just have such a respect for people who transcend
Yes,
and people who evolve and people who are not afraid to, in public, become a better version of themselves because there's so much emphasis, I think, that's placed on sameness or staying true or, not selling out that sometimes we miss the mark on that. And I just have loved to see how, given the challenges, that's a theme I'm hearing myself speak
mm,
about right now. But the challenges that people who transcend are people who I look towards as examples to follow.
I love it. Yeah, that is absolutely accurate about him. And besides his music, that's a whole nother dinner conversation that we could have. You could discuss that. But I totally agree about his ability to transcend, to reach so many global communities. And what I particularly am fond of is that the bravery to try anew, and that
Exactly.
speaks to that transcending part. But he's a published author, and
Yeah.
brilliant mind, and that's been demonstrated and displayed in his lyrics. World traveler, and then his business acumen is just
Yeah.
bar none.
And of course, Mrs. Obama could bring Mr. Obama.
Yeah.
And of course, Jay-Z could bring Mrs. Carter, Beyonce.
Absolutely,
Would be a
absolutely.
good dinner.
Both of those women have made some great decisions as it relates to their spouses, their marital choices. Doc, I could talk to you forever and know that you are always welcome back. I'm so excited about what you continue to provide communities across the globe, particularly women of color. I know you've had a huge impact in helping them to have a generational effect as it relates to their businesses. So hats off to you. Continued success. And I look forward to signing up for an incubator very soon and learning a little bit of that wealth of knowledge that you so generously share with others.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It has been my pleasure. Viewers, thank you so much for joining me today for this edition of Realizing Potential. I'm Wendy Wilson, and I look forward to seeing you next time.